Welcome to a new Paradigm of Education podcast. I'm your host, Monique Sayers, along with Carrie Jeroslow. Today, we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Maggie Verderame, and she's a joyful homeschooling mother with a background in theatre, music, early childhood development, yoga for all ages, and a healthy natural living, who believes in the power, presence, creativity, and playfulness and unity. I'm so grateful to have connected with you on this podcast of a new paradigm of education, which is created to be able to walk with all different types of people, whether you're a parent, whether you're an educator, whether you're somebody who's just interested in helping our children. We're all here holding hands together in this space and really just putting forth our own unique gifts and wisdom, all for the good of humanity and the next generation. So welcome, Maggie.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really grateful and excited to be here.
So I'd like to start by offering this space for you to guide us or introduce us to what brought you to being on this podcast with us. What is it that you'd like to share with everybody about a new paradigm or about what you're doing in this world?
Well, I guess first and foremost, I'm a homeschooling parent, and I never planned to become a homeschooler. It was part of the journey that fell into our laps in a mysterious and beautiful way. But now, 7 years into homeschooling our daughter, who was in 7th grade, looking back, I feel like there were a lot of clues along the way to bring us here. And there was a lot of experience in my personal and professional life that led us to being here as well. And part of that was just about trying to live more consciously, trying to live more thoughtfully and mindfully, and having a deep respect for children in general, and really always wanting, if I ever had children, like going way back to before I even had a child, if I ever had children, kind of having that intention that they would have a unique upbringing that was really, really centered around them, that respected them fully. And homeschooling became part of that journey.
That's amazing. You know, okay, so Maggie and I go way back. We met in 2000 in Las Vegas through her husband worked for Blue Man Group, which I was the director of. And then we ended up working really closely together with her yoga studio in Las Vegas. She owned a yoga studio that I managed, and I had, you know, an energy and a massage room. And I have always so greatly admired you and admired just how you have shown up in this homeschooling space, and admired you as a mother as well, because you're kind of everything that I'm not as a mom. I mean, a lot of things I'm not. I'm talking like in the creativity and loving the, you know, just you're so creative and wise with, you know, following your heart in terms of how you school your daughter. And I'm so thankful that you're here sharing this, because like you said, you didn't intend to homeschool, but you have made such a beautiful, you know, you took the opportunity and just stepped into it fully and are doing it in such a beautiful way. I could never homeschool. And like, we've had so many conversations about this in the beginning, like it just didn't work for me as a person, for my sons, and for my family, and for my circumstances, like all together didn't work. And so I've kind of always, you know, just been like such a fan of what you've done. And I'd love to know kind of your journey from like, I'm deciding to homeschool. Like if you could, you know, sum up, like I'm deciding to homeschool. I never thought I would, to where you are today, and kind of just like how you journeyed that path.
Sure. Well, A, thank you. B, you're incredibly creative. So, and we all use our creative strengths in different ways. And I definitely have put my creative energy behind our homeschool experience. First, I want to start off by saying that I while I am a homeschool advocate in our own life, I am a mindful education advocate. I think first and foremost, again, child-centered is always what I'm interested in and always what I'm excited about. And I don't think that homeschooling is necessarily for everybody. And I don't think that homeschooling the way I do it is going to work for even, you know, the person next door to me. And I mean, I'm in this big homeschool community and we all do it uniquely. And a blessing there is that I happen to live in a place, if anyone's listening to this and they are interested in homeschooling, the first thing I always advise is find out what your rules and regulations in your area are. Make sure that you are, because the first step in being mindful and being child-centric is making sure that your child has all of the tools and everything in place that they need to continue to grow and learn and experience the world with as much opportunity as possible. And so where I live, we have a lot of freedoms in terms of what we're allowed to do homeschooling, at least up until high school. And so I was able to really kind of craft and cultivate what we do in a day, a week, a month, in a school year, which was a joy for me. And it is also a stressor. I'm not going to lie. I mean, on an annual basis, you know, one different thing between being a homeschooling parent, just like when you're parenting without educating your child, every year brings something new and different. When you're a homeschooling parent, you know, you spend the summer, you can't recreate the same wheel that you did. Like a teacher who teaches kindergarten every year is like, oh, you know, that science unit we did on ladybugs worked really well. I'm going to do that again this year. And oh, maybe I'll add this one thing in. You know, we're always doing the next thing or the new thing. And then in my homeschool experience, it's been really, really important that my daughter get to lead a lot of the way. So we started by looking at, you know, where she was academically, where she was emotionally, what she was interested in, what were her needs. We actually did start out in school. So my daughter went to Montessori and we loved that. It was a wonderful experience. And then we transitioned into a Montessori inspired charter school, and it really was not a fit for her. And then we started to look around at all the school opportunities around us, and none of them felt like a fit for her. We quite quickly at age 6 started to see that her light was literally dimming. And I'm very grateful. I think most parents have that ability to see that. I have spent a lot of time training and looking for energy in people and how to read that and how to support them where they're the highest vibrational energy. So I was really aware. And at first, my husband and I jumped in to try and be present in the school environment. And there was just a point where we were so present in the school environment and she was still so not growing, not lights on, not learning, not expanding her horizons, and not getting the opportunities that she was wishing for, that it didn't matter. I mean, she was super happy that we were there, but it didn't matter. It just wasn't a fit for her. And so we actually started to homeschool partway through grade 1. We got to winter break, and then we just didn't go back. And we did that legally. Like we took a couple weeks off, and then we decided to set up our paperwork and talk to the school district and actually become official homeschoolers. So I did kind of go into it flying by the seat of my pants, and there I am grateful that I have, I didn't spend a year planning out grade 1. So I'm grateful that I do have some background with kids, and I do have some, a lot of creative background, and I just kind of pulled a lot of things together. And the best piece of advice that I got, like I said, kind of my whole journey was pushing this way without me even necessarily realizing it. My older sister was a homeschooling mom, and her kids are much older than my daughter, and she homeschooled them all the way through. And I remember I had a conversation with her, and the best piece of advice when I was feeling like really frenetic and really stressed was basically to be present. In her own words, in her own way. She said, look, I hear the tension, and I hear that you're trying to figure it all out and know it all right now. And you're not going to, because just like when your daughter was, 3 months old was different than when she was 6 months old, was different than when she was 18 months old, was different than when she was 6. Every moment is growing and changing and different. And she said, what I know is I know you could do first grade. She said, I'm sure you could just, if you just decided, set the intention to enjoy this time with your daughter and let her lead a little bit of the way, just start there. And it was like just the biggest breath that I like, the exhale that I needed. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't have to know what we're doing in college. I can do first grade. I can see where she is. And from there, I started to call on local people that I trusted, resources in the homeschooling community, resources in the Montessori community, different teachers who led me to other resources, who sat with me lovingly and gave me a lot of insight and showed me how they would teach certain things. And we kind of just were able to blend, you know, what's typically taught. And where we live, you have to come up with an educational plan. So you do have to present that to the school district and show them, this is what I'm going to teach. And so me being me, I did an educational plan for the first 3 years, because I tend to think really big. And then from the really big, I can pull the smaller bits. And so I looked at what's typically taught broad stroke wise in grades 1 through 3. And I listed out, okay, so we're going to cover all of these topics, but then I got to get creative as to when and where and how we were going to do that. And that's just kind of continued to balloon to this day in grade 7.
Wow.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
you know,
go.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say one thing, you know, that you said kind of in the beginning of that explanation, which is, I think, to me, new paradigm, which is looking at the unique, like knowing that every child is unique and that every child learns a little different, is different. And that's where, you know, any kind of schooling, when they really look at the unique child, that seems more child-centered than like, this is the curriculum. I mean, there has to be kind of probably a balance of both, but like in a school system, but that there is flexibility for children to be their unique self.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say that I have found, you know, again, this is a thing of privilege. Like if we have the privileged opportunity, the luxury to pick and choose our schools, a smaller environment is always going to provide a little bit more personal experience for each child. So, and that was kind of what I started to see with my daughter. And so we've been able to do things where it's so small, it's just like me or my husband and I and our daughter, for a lot of educational opportunities. And then it gets a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger as we co-op with other friends, as we go out into a larger group and do field trips, or we're, you know, putting together a group to find things that we're all interested in learning about or something like that. But that is really what I felt. I was looking at this place that was so shiny and seemed to be built on this lovely intention to, you know, support and better these small humans and help cultivate their minds. And really, in our experience, it was a place where the teachers were exhausted. They were spent, they were not trained in how to actually manage the room in the way that they needed to be able to manage the room. And then there was so much bureaucracy involved. You know, in my daughter's case, by grade 1, she was born with a genetic issue that caused her colon to be much too big for her body. We didn't know this at the time. So from 2 weeks on, she started in with a health issue, and we didn't exactly understand what it was. And it presented early on as reflux, and then it presented as, like, you know, motion sickness as she got a little bit bigger. And then we thought that perhaps she had cyclical vomiting syndrome, and she had a specialist working with her. And when we figured out that it was actually just something that, it would take a good long period of time to grow out of, and there were some specific strategic steps that needed to be taken to manage it in the earlier stages. When we went to the school, and literally one of the things was, so she has a hydration absorption problem, and without being able to absorb hydration properly, she needs to take in a specific amount of water every 15 minutes. So she was 6 years old and perfectly capable. We had been managing and working on this. And then it turned into, okay, well, it's not okay for her to have her water bottle out at the, with her. So she has to go to the nurse's office to get her water. And we had to do paperwork. And that was at the point I was so stressed out. And I just thought, so this is an example of a place that probably started with a good intention and now has outgrown its ability to maintain that intention. So how do we now let's bring it back to center and get more focused on this one particular child. And like when I run, yoga camps for children, or when I've run classes for kids, I do see that there is a finesse and a challenge to working with a larger group of children. And there is, if I have it in my control to keep it small enough, an opportunity every single time I'm with those children to connect one-on-one, to get feedback from them, to really observe and witness what they are needing, what they're getting out of things, where their light is, where they're getting the most, excitement and joy. And then I always go back and make a plan. Now, how do we keep it at that joyful level? How do we, and even if that means that then I've assessed each one of the children in my program, and then I'm now going to create a lesson plan for everybody or a class experience for everybody that at some point touches on that light and that joy that each of those children needed. Like, that's the way I want to create a broader lesson plan for kids. And that is what I think I expected from any school, and just not exactly what I saw. And that is not to say that those schools don't exist, because I think they absolutely do. They did not seem to exist where I lived at the time. And they just weren't available to us at the time. I wanted to say, and we couldn't afford them if they did, but I don't actually believe that's true. We just couldn't find them locally. That said, my daughter is coming to the end of grade 7 and has expressed interest in attending an external high school. So we started but again, she expressed the interest and I did not poo-poo it. I didn't say, no, we're homeschoolers, or I'm afraid for you to do that, or any of that. I just listened. I sat with it. I sat with, what's my stress level about this? What's mine versus what's hers? Why does she have this curiosity and this interest? What is she wanting to study? And then there's the reality that you can continue to grow and learn with your kids. And also there are points in time where you get to a place where you're like, gosh, this kid is a genius, and I am not necessarily the best option of an educator. So we outsource a lot of different things. And so what I did, I spent the entire beginning of this year sitting. I did no other work. I was like, I'm just going to focus on her desire, really listening, and then pulling together all of the options so that we could start having an educated conversation as a household. And so we've toured some schools. I have figured out exactly what we'll do for homeschool. If we end up homeschooling through high school or homeschooling through a point in high school, that will make it really possible for her to properly transfer into another program if she chooses to do that. We have picked out what schools there are locally available to us that support her in the interest that she wants. We've gone and looked at them. We've had meetings with them. We've toured them. We've set up all the processes that need to be in place in order to move forward with them, if that's what she chooses. And then we've had really open communication with her saying, you are absolutely supported to choose and try any of these things. And if they aren't working for you, we will have a family meeting. We will sit down and we will figure out what isn't working. Are there ways that we can make it work? What could be different about it? And know that you can always come home again, and that we have that plan in place for how we would continue to homeschool you all the way up until college. Because I did get to the point where I had to start thinking about college, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing what you've shared. There's so much to reflect on with everything you've shared. First of all, I love how much care you're giving your daughter, that is priority. And that there's limitless options for education. And I'm really grateful for your family that you're exploring what is for her highest good. And I can see that's in your heart. It's really beautiful. And in our book, actually, one of our authors, Janet, she was a homeschooling parent as well. And her child went through the same process. He said, "Mummy, I'm ready to cross the bridge now." And he drew like a little picture. He was ready to go and look at the other schools. And so he moved from homeschooling into regular schooling because that was his choice and what he needed and he wanted. And so I really believe that's the key, is what you're saying, is just being able to listen. And also wanted to reflect on offering joy to children. Like, of course, I mean, what else are we here to do, like, than to offer joy and to offer that essence? Like, that is what I do. That's why I am a teacher. Like, if I am not sitting in joy, then what am I doing? Like, how can I be educating? How can I be passing on that to somebody? And then I also wanted to express the realities that you were sharing as well. Like, like how when you started out, like, you just didn't know what to do. And I know that there's a lot of people like out there at the moment that are maybe they're stepping away from mainstream schooling for different reasons, and they want to homeschool and they don't know what to do, and they don't know if they have the energy or how they do it. And this leads me into another question of yours, because we were recently talking offline about burnout and things like that, like the reality of what it's like to be a homeschooling mum. You've got all these resources, but then there's also that moment of, am I going to be burnt out? What am I going to do? So I'd love to ask you about that as well. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I want to touch back on something that you just said, and reiterate again that I really feel strongly about the fact that it needs to be about the children, and like you said, joy, what else am I here to do? So I did not have a joyful childhood. And that was always part of, whenever I began working with children and whenever I had the opportunity to be around children, that was always my underlying intention, was how can this be, about them and be a joyful experience for them? It's almost like a reciprocal kind of giving back. I know that sounds weird because I'm saying I didn't have a joyful childhood. I happened to be married to someone who had like the most idyllic, childhood. And like, I remember the first time I met his family and saw where he lived, there were literal like cherry blossoms flying in front of like his childhood bedroom window. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is just, the most gorgeous and sweetest, like child-centric upbringing you could possibly have. And it was just proving to me like, so it is possible, but it takes, when I talked to his parents, it wasn't like that just happened. It takes a lot of, intention, and it takes some effort. And so, it is about pulling together things, but I think it starts with that intention to not have it be about you. And that allows you to be also a little bit more open-minded to what are the possibilities. And then I think you also are more magnetic, because you're working on behalf of a beloved child. You're more magnetic to what they need. Those resources start to appear magically, I think, in your life. I actually do have a resource just to get to the nuts and bolts of things where you were, saying like a lot of people, they don't know where to begin. So my closest girlfriend here started homeschooling after we did. She has 2 children and we've co-opted together. She is a professional educator and she has a PhD in working with children with autism spectrum disorder. And she's a special educator. And she and I actually, at the beginning of COVID, we saw all these parents just scurrying and panicking. And we were like, oh my gosh, the stress level that they're under in the general state of the world. And now because they're like, wait, but I never even had to think about this. What do we do? So we actually created a webinar about joyful homeschooling, how to start a joyful homeschool, trying to take some of that pressure off. And we created a resource that is a massive PDF booklet that anyone can look through. It's got links to all different kinds of resources for any kid. And it's useful for anyone who just wants to enrich their schooled child's life. It doesn't need to be just for a homeschooled child. So that's kind of one piece of the puzzle, is putting those things together, pulling as many resources, like knowing that, okay, this resource pulling season is a season. This is not how I'm not going to be like frenetic the entire time through. And then holding that intention. Now, when I'm homeschooling, I want to be present with my child and just do the thing we're doing. I don't want to be thinking about what I, should be getting done in another part of my house, or what work I could be doing, or having any kind of things like that. But then paying attention when you're in the moment with your child. And I think this really speaks to helping you avoid or at least transcend burnout. When you're in the moment with your child and you notice, my mind is actually somewhere else, or I'm feeling a level of resentment, which every homeschooling parent, do not believe them if they tell you they've never resented for a moment. They haven't had a moment of like, God, like if this kid wasn't here, I could be having a cup of tea, or I could be working, could be writing a blog post, or, doing whatever. Those moments also, like, it's nature. So just allow the nature, communicate clearly with the child, be like, mommy's got to go in the other room for a minute, or whatever. You get them set up, and then you go and you take that break, and or even if it's at the end of the day, once your child is in bed, and you're reflecting on the day, and you're thinking like, okay, at what points were I really at my best? One of the ways I think to stay at your best is to set intention in the morning, every single morning, to set intention, so that when you start to get a little scatterbrained or less mindful or feeling stressed, you can stop, take a breath, and come back to your intention and go, what was my intention today? And I don't mean an intention like a to-do list. My intention is to get math done by 10 a.m. Really, I'm talking about a spiritual intention, because if anybody gets math done by 10 a.m., I need to know how. I'm talking about something that really is sacred for you to be your highest best self in every action that you take. Maybe it's, my intention is to be kind. And then also to remember, like, if it's, say, using kind as an example, if your intention is to be kind, that means you're being kind to everyone, not just your child, not just your pet, not just your partner, not just the person who comes to the door with the package. You have to also be kind to yourself. And so if you're judging yourself, you don't think you're good enough at math to teach your child math, you aren't enough, you're, didn't get lunch on the table by 11:53, whatever it is. And you have to step back in those moments and note, and then go, okay, so my intention was to be kind, and I've been kind to everyone else, and now I'm being really unkind to myself. What would I say to a close friend who was in this struggle moment? Let me say that to myself, and I think that really, really, really helps. And I truly could not believe more, because I have hit up against burnout completely, and very recently, actually, in trying to do all the things. And putting a lot of pressure on myself to do all the things, and to do all the things at a certain level, the bar for me is way high, and the bar that I hold for everybody else is so much lower. So trying to find that ease in there, and really taking a moment to step back and reflect and go, where am I being fair? Where am I not being fair? And I think one of the things that I hear more than anything else from parents of school-age children, especially homeschooling parents, is always around self-care. It's the last thing on their to-do list. It is the thing they're waiting to get started till after their kid finishes XYZ. And it is the thing, though, that when you put into place, you actually somehow magically start to accomplish more. You actually somehow enjoy the process more. Your child actually starts to grow in a more enlightened, joyful, lighthearted way. And, so it is not the thing like, I'm going to start exercising when my child goes to college. Like, you will be so fried and unwell and unhappy through the whole process, and then you will get to the other side of the process, and you'll look back and you'll have regret. You'll be like, gosh, I wish I was more present. I wish I had more joy in that experience. And I really do believe that the way to get that presence and that joy in the experience for you and for everyone that you're working with is to create self-care in your days in such a way that you see it truly as sacred, to remember that you are a sacred being, deserving and worthy of care as much as all these people you're nurturing, if not more, because you're nurturing all these people. That I think is the first step, like in avoiding burnout.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, really, like, how I have my own, self-care course, and I just think that self-care is the foundation of any kind of personal growth, because it is, homeschooling is about your child, but you're growing and evolving as well as a person and a parent, and a spiritual being and a human being. You are evolving as well. And so you've got to have that, that's why it's so sacred, is because it's not something that is like a luxury. It's actually, you have to do it if you really want to live like you're saying, in presence and joy.
It's a necessity for sure. And I am going to be completely candid. It is a necessity that I often put last, that I personally often, do actually wake up with the 10 zillion things that I want to accomplish that day. And I'm like, okay, but nobody's awake, so I could do all of those things now. And it's always an unrealistic list. It's, and I'm like, whatever, am I going to die with the to-do list fully checked off? And is that what I actually want out of this life? I don't know, and so how do I want to start my day? Like even this morning is a perfect example. It was a day knowing that we were going to meet here, and it was a day that, had a little bit of flexibility. And I woke up with like partway through a couple projects, had a few things I was doing yesterday that I'm like, I could finish them. And so I got real, and when I'm like, but what should I do? What should I do? What's going to serve this day better? And I also do know, I think really knowing yourself, self-awareness is incredibly helpful. I know that there are certain types of things to have them checked off right away for me actually does just alleviate a level of stress. So I looked for, where can I balance that? I know I need to move. How much time do I have to move? And I know that this one little thing hanging over my head, I would like to not have hanging over my head by after 9 a.m. this morning. So how can I do both of those things and then show up the way I want to show up? And I think, I don't necessarily think for everybody it's going to be routine and regimented, but I think as much as you can create routine around it, and ritual, for me, ritualizing self-care makes it extra special. If there's just that moment of I'm, taking 5 breaths, or I'm lighting a candle before I wash my face, or I'm doing, making it a little extra special, I'm going to show up even for that self-care a little bit more. And Carrie, what I really wanted to say though, is your journey with self-care is so inspiring and so supportive to me because it's so realistic. Because I remember when you got to a point where you were like just so frazzled, and you said, I'm gonna, what was it? Like, I'm going to show up on my yoga mat for 3 minutes.
I said my minimum, that's like how I talk about self-care, is I had a minimum practice. I was going to do 3 sun salutations at least every day. And that's how I started, because I was so lost. And I am now on, I think like my 1900th day of yoga every day, because I made it so easy. And now it's like, my self-care has become non-negotiable. I'm just like, I have to have that every day. And I'm better to everyone in the world because of it. And sometimes it was like at 11:45 at night, everyone finally got to sleep and it's quiet. I get on my mat and do 3 sun salutations. Like, I did it. But thank you. I would not be here right now in this state without saying like, I have to do this. I have to. It was a lifeline.
That's that piece that I think when, what I talk about, why I call it sacred self-care, is I think when you make it sacred, when you understand that it is a non-negotiable, and that it and you are so sacred and so deserving of that intention and attention, that then it becomes ritualized and routine in your life. Then it becomes the thing. And the minute that we start to do that, No, it's easier with a little bit of an older child. Obviously, a 9-month-old is not going to be attentive to mommy's needs. But if when your child is a baby, and really for any woman at any point hearing this with whatever age child, you can make this shift. If you have the luxury of being, about to adopt or being pregnant, about to birth your new coming little person, hear me now and know, start this early.
Yes.
But if you didn't start it early, you can always start it with clear communication. You can always sit down with and what I do usually is I go into any conversation about my needs from a place of remembering that I'm talking to people who love me. I'm talking to people who care. My child cares and does not want me to be frazzled and stressed and unhappy. My child wants a parent who is mindful and, gleeful and present. And if I can be clear about the things that I need to put in place in order to be those things, then she can make the space for that. And then it is my job as a parent and, like the head of the household in that way, so to speak, to say, to stick to it, to actually model that, the importance of it, and and then celebrate it too. I think celebration is something that women do not do regularly. I think that, and I feel like it's like a completion of a cycle that we skip over. Therefore, we never actually complete the cycle fully. Like, if we don't pat ourselves on the back and celebrate it and talk about it at the dinner table and be like, oh, like what's working for you with, in whatever the terminology is that works for your child at the age that they are, and then sharing what's working for you as the parent, and what you're proud of, what is one thing that you did positively and well today. And it could have been the littlest thing, but by celebrating it, then your child becomes part of your family culture. And I think this works for single parents. I think it works for partnered parents. I think it works for people in a roommate or a commune situation, any kind of situation where they're in community with others. If you start to create this communication loop, it just becomes part of your culture. And then everybody starts to support everybody else's needs in that group, and everybody is better for it.
It's an amazing skill to bring into any household and any classroom, even being able to fully listen and to communicate from that place of authenticity, because children can read us more than we think that they can. And so it's really necessary to do that. And I also think it's also about role modeling as well. So by you making that time and space for yourself, you're role modeling that, this sacred time is important. And perhaps the children will also have their own special sacred moments that they want space away from you as they grow up as well. And then it's making you a happier person. It's making everybody a happier people. And I feel like as educators as well, like I know myself, whenever I step into any type of event or classroom or whatever it is, I'm always making sure, okay, I'm just going to breathe a few moments. I'm going to turn up as myself. I'm going to feel my heart. I'm just going to take that time so then I can fully show up and be fully present. And it also makes me feel grounded. And it's so necessary. It's so necessary. My sacred ritual is probably a little bit different. I'm always in the ocean. I'm just like always in there, like, just release. That's my time. And if I don't get in there, I notice I get agitated. I need that cleansing time. And so it's really important. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the ocean. Do you want to come or not? And off I go. And it's non-negotiable, because if I don't do that, I know I'm not going to be helping myself or others. So thank you for sharing. I also wanted to ask you, did you have any offerings around that you offer or serve people with in that way?
Yes. Well, I would be really happy to share the resource packet that I was telling you about. So we can put a link in the show notes so people can just get a hold of that. Because like I said, I can't even remember, but I think it's 35 pages long. It's
amazing.
Yeah, again, it's great for any parent of, any child all the way up into high school, just looking to enrich their day-to-day experience, or looking for some resources to support them, or some resources to support the parent in having the time to take that moment of sacred self-care, because you're like, oh, look, I got this great unit study and it's totally like a do it yourself kind of a thing for an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old or whatever. So you're going to do this and I'm going to go meditate, or I'm going to, whatever it is. And then we're going to check back in. So I'd really love to share that. And then I am in process actually of developing, I'm very close to launching a new course. It's going to be a 5-week-long live experience, and it's very simplified, in this world, especially with so many people coming into homeschooling because of lockdowns and everybody just constantly being on that screen and having this login and this and that and all this stuff. And everybody's a little kind of fried from that too, I think. So I've decided to shift gears. A lot of my offerings were focused, in that way, like go into the portal and just find the stuff. I do offer an library of yoga classes and other movement classes and guided meditations and heart-centered music. That's available on my website at magrishi.com all the time. You can use code newbie and get your first month of unlimited access to that for $20. And then after that, it's just $30 a month. And that's a really wonderful thing to just kind of have in your back pocket, because you don't have to think about it. It's just there all the time. There's hundreds of classes and opportunities and all different kinds of movement styles and whatnot that, something that's going to appeal to you. It's very easily searchable. But outside of that online, kind of less personal experience, what I'm developing now is this 5-week course called Brightly Ever After. And it is to support women, anyone who identifies as a woman, because you are likely not number one on the priority list, and especially anyone who is a parent of a school-age child or a homeschooling parent, in helping to make self-care sacred. It's what are the strategic actual things that we need to do in order? What's the mindset we need to have? What are the actions we need to take, and how can we do it? And then it's having me in your corner for that whole 5-week journey to really support and check in and help you be accountable to and make it really happen. So it will be 5 weeks, and there's no portal to log into or anything. On Sunday morning, you get a beautiful email with some lovely discovery docs, which are like worksheets, but more fun and better, and like journal prompts and all sorts of things like that you need for the week. You'll get a mantra for the week and a theme for the week and certain specific assignments. And your job is to commit wholeheartedly. It's 5 weeks of your life. It's your job is to commit wholeheartedly to that 5 weeks and each week. And then on Saturday morning, we have a live group coaching session where we're all together in this type of forum, like on Zoom, and we have accountability buddies and we check in, we reflect on the week, and then we set a new intention for the coming week. And it even includes things like each week is a little bit of a different live experience. So one week we'll be doing like yoga and meditation. Another week we might be doing a different kind of movement. Another week we might have a cooking class, because I also provide recipes for people, because I think thinking of nourishing your body as you are nourishing your soul is very, very useful to get people into the kitchen, thoughtfully eating with their children, getting their children on board with eating mindfully. I love the holistic aspect of living in a householding family structure. And so that's what that 5 weeks Brightly Ever After is all about.
Awesome. So needed. It's so needed. Oh my gosh.
I love it. I love it so much. A new paradigm of education really is holistic learning. It's the body, the mind, the spirit, the soul. So I love that you're able to bring all of those aspects into a course, because they're all necessary. We can work on the mind, but we also need to work on the body as well. Both of those need to be in alignment for therefore other types of learning to be happening. And it's just amazing. I'm in awe of what you offer. Every time I speak to Maggie, she's got different things that she offers. She's a very talented woman, and I would definitely go into one of those courses. I know for sure it would be really nurturing, and you've been there yourself, so you know how to help people because you've done it. And yeah, it's amazing. So I really, really thank you so much for being with us today on this podcast. I've learned so much from you, and I'm really excited to see this resource as well to share with everybody. So we'll place that in our links below to help people as well. And yeah, thank you so much, Maggie.
Thank you so much, both of you. It has been a joy. I could talk to you both all day.
All day. Yep. We've done that before.
We have.
So thank you for tuning into a new Paradigm of Education podcast. Namaste.